the worst show I have ever seen.
I loved the show.
This was worse than the 2010 movie.
Worse than the movie? Are you unwell?
The writing was awful. I mean, the changes were actually okay. I just think the wigs looked bad. I loved the Cabbage Man.
Why are we so split on whether Avatar: The Last Airbender, Netflix's version, was a good adaptation or not? Do we just need to take Uncle Iroh's advice and have a nice cup of calming tea?
I don't need any calming tea!
It's not a matter of some in the fandom blindly giving the show praise it doesn't deserve, nor is it other fans being wildly and unnecessarily judgmental in most cases. I say in most cases because to the people making mean comments about the young female actors' appearances,
dishonor on you! Dishonor on your cow!
What it is a matter of perspective.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil!
No, not like that. Albert Kim, the creator of Netflix's live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, posted something really interesting in Subtle Asian Traits recently. Subtle Asian Traits is, sorry, I'm not going to explain it. If you know, you know. For those of you who enjoyed our show, thank you for all the kind words. For those who didn't, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I've said this from the start. Our show was never meant to be a straight remake of Avatar: The Last Airbender. We were inspired by the original, but this is a remix, not a cover. The notes may be familiar, but it was meant to be a new song. And this is where the great divide is. So let's first look at it from the perspective of fans who watched it as a cover. If you're a fan who watched it from this perspective, you're probably disappointed, and I would not blame you for coming away with your expectations having not been met. I've said before, Avatar: The Last Airbender is not adaptable. You can't condense it into a movie or series with fewer episodes, even if you could make a good movie, you know, like with not scenes like this, and expect it to land the same. The show works because of filler episodes. The reason people become emotionally attached to these characters is because we have time to live with them. There's a difference between watching a character go on an adventure and being brought on the adventure with the characters. Avatar: The Last Airbender was beloved because you were living with these characters. You were going to the market to buy food with them. You were sleeping on Appa with them. Non-stop action is entertaining to watch, but it's not immersive in the same way. There's also value in contrast. The heightened emotional moments of the animation hit that much harder because they strongly contrast the more lighthearted, silly moments in the filler episodes. Filler episodes also made the show more immersive by contributing to the world building. The Netflix show took away from this world building by combining multiple episodes into one location. I mean, how many episodes took place in Omashu? Like 3? 4? Why is there so much going on in Omashu, man? You got secret tunnels under the city. You got your neighbors consorting with the Fire Nation. Your King Boomy's having a mental breakdown and refusing to go to therapy. Jet's pulling a Gale from the Hunger Games. And worst of all, the Cabbage Man's losing his cabbages. That's so many locations that you miss seeing, as well as missing feeling like you're on a journey, because the gang doesn't really journey to that many locations in the Netflix show, so you lose half the world in translation.
How am I gonna find him, Uncle? He is clearly a master of evasive maneuvering.
You have no idea where you're going, do you?
Well, plus, having to mash multiple animated episodes into one live-action episode forces the characters to be split up, which prevents relationship building. Avatar animated version generally stuck to just an A plot, or a plot A and a plot B, with the gang in plot A and Zuko and Iroh in plot B. Avatar Netflix version has plot A, B, C, sometimes D, might even sprinkle in an E. And all the characters are split up by plot. How do you form the deep friendships they form in the animated show when Katara and Sokka are chilling like Frodo in Return of the King for 2 episodes? And they didn't have to do that. The Netflix show had nearly as long of a runtime as the animated show, with animated Avatar having only about 1 more hour of runtime. The animated show was able to fit that many plots and places into almost the same amount of time. The changes made to the live action, they sucked up so much precious time. Like putting Azula and Ozai in season 1. Let's be real. They put Daniel Day Kim in there just for the star power. And like, I'm not complaining. No, Bat and Caleb, that's Fire Lord Ozai. Do not thirst over the Fire Lord.
How do you expect me to side with the Avatar when Daniel Day Kim is right there? Daniel Day Kim's Fire Lord Ozai is so Zadday.
And there was lengthy dialogue meant to make characters like Zuko and Azula more sympathetic and develop them in ways that didn't need to be done till later seasons. And the dialogue was lengthy. I enjoyed this scene, but I think there's something to be said about the show conveying nearly the same sentiment that took, 10 minutes in just one look. You have a perfect cake recipe, nearly flawless. Why are you messing with the recipe? Why not just bake the same cake again? We like that cake, even though we have the exact same cake in our refrigerator. Wait, do we need a second of the exact same cake? Would it be better to give us a a different flavored cake, considering the first cake will always still be in our fridge. Like, we can always go back and eat it. Maybe even though I like that first cake, maybe I don't need 2 of it. Maybe I just made you all hungry for cake? Because they are baking this cake in an entirely different kitchen with entirely different ingredients. Even if they could replicate the cake, I'm gonna stop with the metaphor now. Even if they could create a shot-for-shot remake of the original Avatar, what would be the value of that? Is there something inherently better or more valuable about seeing the exact same thing with real people instead of animation? I don't think so. And I think we know an attempt at a near remake of the animated series would never live up to the original, because as I've said, there are things in animation you cannot do in live action. Animation suspends disbelief in a way that's harder to do in live action. It's an entirely different art form, and trying to translate an animation directly to live action, a medium it was not created for, without making any changes would not have worked. The only logical thing to do in this situation is to just make a different flavored cake inspired by the original, but using the ingredients that you do have. Sorry, I said I was gonna stop. I'm just really hungry for cake right now. It's almost like trying to translate musicals to film. You can do a shot-for-shot remake, and it kind of works. I actually really liked this movie. But it doesn't necessarily translate well. Or you can make changes that help it translate to a new medium while still retaining some of the musical-like qualities. I think everyone would agree this was a great movie musical. And you come up with something, you know, sort of in between the two. Or you can translate it entirely and lose nearly all the essence of the original musical, but it's like it works in a movie format. And I would argue that Netflix Avatar was able to achieve what Hairspray did, which was translate it to a new medium in a way that worked while still retaining the essence of the original. Because despite everything the show got wrong when it came to the original, it does work as something new. This is a remix, not a cover. The notes may be familiar, but it was meant to be a new song. Because when you judge it in terms of a remix, the song, at least in my opinion, is a pretty good one to listen to. One way they remixed it well was by the fact that they did not take away character arcs without writing in a worthy replacement. I talked about Sokka's sexism arc in my reaction video for the first episode, but this is a great example. Sokka's sexism was taken out, yes, but it was replaced by a similar, and as I argued in that video, an almost more effective arc of him feeling inadequate as a leader and a warrior, which is true to the arc his character went through in the animated show. Paku being betrothed to Gran was taken out, but it was replaced by an arguably more impactful narrative, where Paku doesn't change his mind about being sexist just because he loves Katara's grandmother, but because he sees the way the younger generation of men accept Katara. He sees the way her skills give them the hope they desperately need, and he realizes that he needs to be more like water, the element of change, and change with the times. Albert Kim said on Subtle Asian Traits, "I've talked elsewhere about the reasons, logistical, financial, creative, behind the changes we made, so I won't get into them here. Just know that nothing was taken for granted and no decision was made haphazardly or with disrespect." And I think it's clear these changes were not made haphazardly. They were made with the intent to support the story the show was trying to tell. Like with Bumi's change, that was a deliberate change to serve Aang's arc and the overall story they were telling. It wasn't just like a let's butcher Bumi's character for fun. And something else they did a great job with was adding arcs where the original show lacked them. The best thing you can do to make an audience fall in love with a character and root for that character's happiness is to give your character a strong want. As I said in my Little Mermaid video, that's the power of the I Want song. Once you know the deepest desire of your protagonist and what's driving them, it's over. You want them to win now.
The way that they fall in love with you is because you want something. And there's some sadness, there's a little bit of longing, and there's just some kind of way that you can connect with the audience.
There's a reason people clicked so fast with Toph, because introducing new characters to an established set of characters audiences already love can be a hard task. But once you knew Toph's deepest want, which was to be loved and accepted for who she actually is and not who people think she is, you can't help but root for her. It's like Mulan singing Reflection to you. Yeah, when will her reflection show who she is inside?
Seriously, what's with you people? I'm blind!
Let me ask you, what was animated Suki's main want? You could say Sokka, and you wouldn't be wrong. You could say something generic, like to help people win the war, but that's not a want that's unique from other characters. That doesn't necessarily make you root for her happiness personally. But the show gave her a strong want, which was to see and experience more than her little life on Kyoshi Island. And all of a sudden, she has a clear and strong motivation for becoming a Kyoshi warrior, for eventually leaving the island to go help others, and for joining Team Avatar. That episode was her I Want song. That was basically how far I'll go for Moana. She's Moana, but she's got that Mulan makeup removing skills, because dang, what was that? And this was not something they just made up with no respect to canon. This idea and backstory was actually first written in the Avatar comic Suki alone. Similarly, Yue got a want which was being free of what people expected her to be. This was a very clever want to give her, because it gave Sokka and Yue a concrete bond over having to deal with the pressure and responsibility at a young age of being responsible for their respective water tribes. Yes, the filler episodes were cut, but you can still have beloved and lived-in characters without filler. Why? Because fandom fills in the gaps. The Avengers is a good example of this. If you lived through the 2012 era of Marvel fanfiction, these characters ended up feeling more lived in and fleshed out because of the fandom filling in the gaps that took place between movies. Of writing fic and drawing art, building these characters' relationships in a way that there wasn't time for in the movies. And Avatar not only already has a very rich fandom, but we already have the backstory that supports filler in our brain, which is why rather than show filler, the Netflix show can get away with just referencing it. Like playing Leaves from the Vine in the background during Zuko and Iroh scene. Yeah, you know which one I'm talking about. The thing about the Avatar Netflix live action is that it doesn't like hit as emotionally, you know, like it doesn't make me feel as emotional.
Ten gave me this. Gave me strength.
Sorry, what was this?
10 never needed it because he was the strongest person.
It doesn't. Okay. They don't need to tell or show exactly how Iroh feels in that moment. They just need to play Leaves from the Vine, and it already has emotional weight. The show has years of emotional weight from the fandom as a foundation. And more to the point, the reason, despite all the changes, that the show still works is because there's enough little threads that tie us back to the original show. Like the costumes, the music, all these little moments they knew were special to fans that they included, like the Cabbage Man and Secret Tunnel. Which brings me to the bigger point here, which was that a lot of respect was given to the cultures that inspired the show behind the scenes. From the director of the third episode working with the prop master to create foods inspired by weddings in Pakistan, his father's homeland, to the composer going to countries in Asia and hiring Asian musicians to play their traditional instruments to record the score, the costume designer actually hired indigenous artists directly for details like designs on the parka trims, to the very fact that the showrunner, Albert Kim, as an Asian American, said he understood how important it was to center and celebrate Asian and indigenous cultures in this show. And if there's any point I want to drive home in this lengthy video, are you still here? I love you. Am I going to praise a piece of media just for being Asian? No. Fight me, live action Mulan. But you can clearly tell that behind the scenes of Netflix Avatar, they put care and effort into making this show something that would feel authentic and something that would feel empowering to Asian Americans and other Asians in the diaspora and indigenous people who rarely see themselves represented or represented in a positive light on Western screens, and celebrating them. And that is something that I think should not be overlooked. So does the show work as a cover? Absolutely not, no. There was so many changes to the characters, to the story. Some of these characters would be almost unrecognizable if they stood side by side with their animated counterparts. But as Albert Kim said, the show never set out to be a cover. It set out to be a remix. And does the show work as a remix? Absolutely, yes. The show worked because it was not trying to be Avatar: The Last Airbender animated edition. It set out to be something new, and it certainly achieved that. I'm going to close out on his words, which I think summarize the message I am trying to leave you with pretty well. He concluded his statement by saying, "We made the show as much for those who'd never seen the original as for the diehard fans. Hopefully you can judge it on those terms. If not, the animated series will always be there. We were always meant to exist alongside it, not take its place. Thanks again for watching and for being so passionate. Whether you love our show or hate it or fall somewhere in between, I respect your opinion and your right to express them. That's what it means to be a fan."